Welcome, friend. Welcome to Fearless with me, Shawna Clingerman. I am your host, Shawna Clingerman. Every time. I am a full time artist and creative mentor, and simply put, I believe in living, loving, and creating without fear. Together, here at Fearless, we will carve out space for ourselves and for our creativity, space to care for our mental health, and most importantly, we will carve out space where we can show up exactly as we are right now. No matter where you are on your journey toward your own fearless, creative life, there is room for you right here. Oh, friends, I'm a little giddy about today's episode and also a little chuckly, laughy about it because I have so thoughtfully titled this episode, People Are the Best. Maybe that's a funny subject for an entire podcast episode, but I wanted to take some time with how just rough the world has been to just put some good words out there about the world, about humanity. It is so easy. We see the memes about how everyone hates everyone. We complain about all the icky things happening in the world. And it is super true. People can be very rough to each other. I know even I have said people are the worst. But I want to show up in maybe what feels more authentic to me in a space to really talk about the opposite truth, maybe even a truer truth. And that is that even in all of our messiness, people can truly be the best. In addition to just talking about why people are amazing, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we, as fellow human people, can show up for each other with love and grace and open hearts. I want to give you some like really tangible tips from a genuine people loving extrovert, not an expert, although if I could be an expert on anything, loving people would be the choice, the subject I would choose 100%. But I am a total extrovert. I love people. I have always loved people. And I have a few, like, actual really practical little ideas for you to help you love people better as well. So bear with me, friends. This is going to be sweet and fun and hopefully not too bossy. But maybe you will walk away from this episode feeling a little new light lit inside your soul with a love for your fellow human people because friends, I think our job here on earth is to be the best fellow human that we can and to love each other really well. So, before we get started, I wanted to take a minute here and do our Keeping It Real segment. But today, I kind of want to talk a little bit about it was a little meta, like the podcast and the experience of putting this out there in the world. And as I'm keeping it real with you, I really just want to say thank you. As of today, last I looked, we were at like 350 downloads slash views, and that is just barely after our second episode has released. And for me, that is so encouraging and so soul filling to know that What I'm offering here is something that you want to hear. Um, I was thinking that one of the things that I'd like to do from time to time is to do a little shout out to one of our reviewers on Apple Podcasts. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review. And although I'll tell the truth right now, I'm a Google girl, my friends. I do know that the Apple podcast world is the important world to show up in, and that reviews make a world of difference for my podcast and who it gets shared with when people start searching for things like creativity, mental health, fearless. You get the idea. So, I wanted to share one of my first few reviews, and it is from a dear friend, a client, somebody I have mad respect for. Her name is Karen. Hi, Karen. And I want to read to you what Karen said because it just moved my little heart. She said, I am super excited to get to share my Shauna with the world. Already feeling sentimental because she said my Shauna. Sorry, focusing. She has so much to offer in her voice. So listen and join her journey. It is great to have someone share real time life. No fluff here. And then she said, love you, Prince of my world. Inside joke. And it is an inside joke. And it's a deep honor, Karen, that I am the prince of your world. Maybe another time I'll share more about that. But I just wanted to genuinely express my gratitude, Karen, to you for that sweet review. There are several other incredible reviews sitting there. Also, so many of you have taken the time to download, to subscribe, to rate, to review, to comment, to share. And these things really, really, really make a difference in the world of content creation from what I've heard, but also I know from experience. So, friends, thank you for helping me get my heart out there into the world and into more earbuds. It really does make all of the difference and mean the world to me. I feel like I should probably give you another keeping it real though, because that feels a little bit fluffy and a little bit like a cop out. And let's be honest, there's got to be something that I can keep it real about with you here, right? I know exactly what it is. So, I am batch recording my podcast, which means when I have the opportunity, I'm trying to do several episodes in a row so that I can get ahead of the game. Still not there yet, but I'm working on it. And so, as I'm sitting here all fresh in my white rainbow t shirt, if you're watching me on YouTube, I wanted to confess to you that I just finished recording another episode, last week's episode about the 100-day project and creative practices, which it's pretty good if I might say so myself. However, I am here and I needed to record another episode, so I went ahead and just changed my shirt, which now that I told you that kind of defeats the purpose of changing my shirt, but it does kind of help break it up, right? Also, from time to time, I am having to hold up my little cut card and cough my little lungs out because all this talking is a little rough on my recovering lungs since I am fighting just a bit of a cold. It is better now, but last week was rough business. Anyways, to keep it real with you, sometimes we change our shirt and pretend it's another day, and that's allowed, but I feel a little better if I just tell you about it right off the bat. Okay. So, today, my friends, I want to talk to you about people. I want to talk to you about why people are really the best. I also want to talk to you about how we can love people better. And I want to share some extrovert tips, extrovert expert tips. I don't know. I want to share some ideas and some strategies that I actually use in my everyday life to help me show up in situations where I feel afraid that I don't know if I'm going to love people well, or where I feel nervous, anxious, insecure, all of the above. I can't wait to talk to you a little bit about my thoughts about how people being amazing and loving people well is so woven together with how we feel about our own selves. And I think this episode is going to be really interesting. That being said, it's a little unconventional. I haven't seen a lot of episodes about why people are the best or how to, how to love well. But I'm hoping that what I share here will give you some seeds, we'll plant some seeds and give you some little sprouts to kind of take under your care as you go out there into the world and love people well yourself. So, before I begin, I need to be 100% honest with you here. As mentioned previously, friends, I am an extrovert. In today's world, it feels kind of trendy to be an introvert, but maybe that's just my perpetual feeling of always wanting to be a part of the main crowd, which is maybe the most extroverted thing. But sometimes when I say I'm an extrovert, I feel like I have to put all these disclaimers because I think people assume extrovert means that I don't listen well, or that I'm kind of a bully, or that I'm really like all on the outside and that there's not a lot of deep things happening inside of me. And that's not true. I spend a lot of time inside of my internal world. But as a true extrovert, it is people that light me up. It is interactions with others that give me purpose and motivation, that fuel me, it lights my fire. And so I'm definitely an extrovert. And so as I talk about loving people, that's part of my personality, is that I love people. And that's not some sort of moral superiority, but I'm hoping that I can make a case for why people are kind of amazing and that I'll get you on board. The other thing about my personality is that I'm an Enneagram 2. And I'm going to talk so much about personality on this podcast. You just wait. There are episodes coming. I freaking love talking personality. I think it is so valuable and meaningful. But one thing about being an Enneagram 2 is that as an Enneagram 2, so much of our identity is kind of woven into the way that we relate with other people. And so I am already hardwired to kind of be obsessed with others. So if you aren't a personality junkie like myself, don't worry, I'm gonna get you on board. But for now, let's work on the love people well train, and we'll talk about personality later. But as an Enneagram 2, those of you that don't like dabble in the personality arts, Enneagram 2s are all about other people. They are obsessed with how the people around them are feeling, what the people around them need, and it feels to me like my main personality drive is to have impactful, meaningful relationships with other people, to have an important role in people's lives. And so all of those things just predispose me. I am kind of hardwired to just love people. I just am. Now, do I always love people? No. Do I love people the best all the time? Absolutely not. But I am kind of obsessed with people. That's part of who I am. Another funny little story about me and a little bit about what kind of created this person that is Shauna is that I grew up kind of with a weird, odd childhood. We were homeschooled. My sister and I were homeschooled during our young childhood. All the way, I didn't go to a public school until I was a freshman in high school, friends. And I didn't even go to a private school until I went for 2 years, my sixth and seventh grade year of school. So I spent most of my life outside of circles of people. I have a sister and we are bestie. Like we are best friends. We are really close. But um and I that is amazing, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I kind of was on the outside, like on the margins. So as a people-pleasing, extroverted Enneagram 2 that grew up kind of on the outskirts of connection, I spent a lot of my childhood trying to understand people and trying to figure out how to ingratiate myself to people. There are things I'm still unlearning from that time, but there's also things that I learned during that time that serve me today. And I have this kind of funny this is probably will only make sense to you if you know what I'm referencing. So forgive me, I'll go quick. But last summer, my friend Jill and I, hi Jill, if you're listening, I went and visited her and we went and saw The Tempest. It's a Shakespeare play. We saw it at this beautiful outdoor amphitheater in Boise. Can't wait to go again. But I'd never seen The Tempest before. And The Tempest is kind of a story about a young girl that grows up in isolation with a really controlling parent and a bunch of other things. But at one point, like people come to her island. She's isolated in the middle of the ocean in this island. And at one point, a storm comes. I think that's why it's called the Tempest. I don't know. But a storm comes and people get beached on her island. And this girl has never been around people ever. And she was like, she saw people for the first time, her eyes just lit right up, and she was like, "Oh, glorious people. Oh, how wonderful are you?" Her instinct, after never having seen people, was to be like enamored and in awe of the majesty of people, like other humans. And although my story is, I didn't grow up on an island with nobody, I think that that actually is part of what predisposes me to think people are kind of amazing because when you have an absence of people in your life and then you fill your life with a community of people, it's impossible not to see how magical people are, especially if you forget everything you know and pretend it's the first time you've seen another human person. Anyways, that is just another little tip of the iceberg that is Shauna and her people loving personality. But if you've seen The Tempest, basically that's me. And also, yes, I think people are glorious regularly. Regularly. Um, so that being said, I do want to say that I do believe that people being awesome really has nothing to do with my personality. Like, it's not my personality that makes people amazing. It's my personality and my like life experiences that has given me kind of a different perspective on people. But I think that people are awesome not because I can see it, but because people are just like, well, they're magic. It's magical. I want you to think for a minute about like something that's very normal in your life that like is just normalized. Like, for example, the grocery store. The grocery store is just a place that we go and we buy food and we feed our families and we make food and it's part of our everyday life. And if you've gone to the grocery store your whole life, it doesn't feel like anything to write home about. It's a grocery store. They're everywhere. People also everywhere. But imagine that you grew up where you did not have access to stores with food. Imagine that you never had access to food that you didn't make with your own hands. Like you had to plant the seed and sow the soil until I don't know planting words. I picked the wrong illustration. Imagine though that you had never been to a grocery store and you are hungry and you're tired and you've been working hard and you walk in the door, and what is this glorious place? It is shelves and shelves and shelves of food that's easy to make that you can buy and feed yourself. It is a wonder. People, my friends, are the same way. Just think for a minute. Just think for a minute about what it's like to be you. Like you are a human person. You're walking around in your body. We all are. We're walking around in our bodies. We are eating and sleeping and staying alive just through like our basic human functions. And then on top of that, we are thinking deep thoughts. We are dreaming of what we want for our lives. We are connecting deeply. We are falling in love. We are um, hurting and laughing and feeling and expressing. We are creating things. That is magic. Like how is that a thing? How is it that there's zillions of people that are just as much of a person as I am and as you are, and we are all doing work in this world? That's that's magic. That, my friends, is a wonder. And I don't sometimes when magic is just part of our everyday, we lose sight of magic because we just see it as regular. We see it as ordinary. But the fact that you are listening to this podcast in the context of your very special, unique one life, and I am sitting over here and I am talking at my computer screen from my very own unique one life. And I have my own hopes and dreams, and you have your hopes and dreams. And we could have a conversation and learn things from each other. It is a thing of wonder. It's marvelous. So even if people freak you out because you just would rather hide away, or you've had bad experiences, or you know, you don't actually like to talk that much, even if all of that is true, from this perspective, from this perspective of looking from the outside, we can still see the magic, the majesty, the wonder of what it is to be a person. I have this really distinct memory from when I was in middle school. It was right after we had moved from Mexico to the States. And for me, there were a lot of things that were like kind of unbelievable. The streets were so clean in the Pacific Northwest compared to Mexico. Um, the access to like abundance was crazy. There was just so many things. But one thing that I noticed from moving from like living in like more ranch style, village style living to moving to the suburbs, one thing that really like that felt so poignant to me was driving through the neighborhood with my family, sitting in the back seat of that car. And I remember really clearly, we're just like driving around. Nobody thought it's that big of a deal. And I looked around me and I saw house after house after house after house. And I thought in my little 11-year-old brain, like, every one of those houses has a family. Every one of those families have children and jobs and dreams and budgets and family dinner night. And I remember saying to the rest of my family, do you realize that people live in all of these houses? Like, there are actual people doing their own thing in their own houses, and they're everywhere. And I remember my whole family, who didn't wax quite as poetic as I did, perhaps, just looking at me like, yeah, people live in houses. And I was like, I could feel it. Like, even when I talk about it, I can still sometimes, when I'm looking out in my neighborhood, I can like feel it in the pit of my stomach. There are people like me, like you. It's amazing. And so I want to just start us off on that note because, friends, the wonder of humanity is pretty remarkable. And I think it's valid. Now, do you have to get sentimental about it like me, or, write poetry, or like catch your breath? No, but I do think that if you give yourself a minute to look around you and think about all of these human people with all of their stories, so many of them just doing the best they can. I think that if you sit with that for a minute, you can't help but feel that like wonder well up inside of you. I hope that that gives you a little bit of a taste for what I'm trying to say here. The thing about seeing humanity as something wonderful and seeing other human people as people just like us is that I think it breeds a sense of reverence and a sense of respect, like honor. Because if I see Joe Schmo walking down the street with a grumpy face, and I don't take a minute to witness his presence, if I don't take a minute to witness the wonder of a person walking around having their own life, I could quickly just have judgments like, what's he so grumpy about? Or I could make decisions about him, or I could just not care, which might even be worse on some levels. But if I see you and the other person and the other person and every person I encounter, if I can see them through that lens of wonder, I can create some space for Joe to have whatever mood he has going on. I can honor his experience and not make it personal, because recognizing somebody else's humanity gives me the opportunity to separate that person from my own humanity, which means his grumpy face is just not all about me. So, with that lens of wonder, let's see if we can respect other people more, and friends, if we can respect ourselves, because all of us are walking around carrying that same width and breadth of experience um and story and meaning and passion, and all of that is pretty darn powerful. We live on a planet that is filled with so much force of will, with so much humanity. And sometimes when I think about it, and I know this is a little optimistic, but sometimes when I think about it, I just feel baffled by the possibilities, because as we honor each other, as we respect other people walking around in their own wonder, we get to together build a world where people matter. And that is pretty darn powerful. The other thing I think is really pivotal about seeing the wonder of humanity is that when we recognize the wonder in our fellow man, our fellow human, our fellow people walking around, experiencing life, when we recognize that experience, it plants a seed in us that gives us reason to love better. Because with wonder and appreciation comes empathy, comes understanding, comes like just space for people to be there, to be walking around in their own human skin. I keep saying walking around. We're not all walking around either. Like we are existing here. We are existing. So I think recognizing that sense of wonder helps us love each other better, and it anchors us in doing good things because kindness and goodness comes more easily when we have that motivation, when we have that recognition of other people and who they are and why they are, you know, wonderful. The thing that I see so much right now, and we all see it's impossible not to witness in today's world, is that there is so much hate and so much fear. People are fighting over small things and big things. People are judging each other for living based on their own human experience. People are hardening their hearts because they don't feel safe. And so they harden their hearts, they close their doors, they ball up their fists. And friends, when we don't see the wonder in each other, we lose sight of our reason to connect. And then everything that we just talked about gets worse and worse and worse because it's through our connection, it's through our empathy that we are empowered to do good for each other and to together make the world a better place, right? So, in all of this fear, all of this anxious, protective energy, it can be very hard to love people well, especially if we walk into our interactions with people with that fear top of mind. If we enter our moments of crossing Joe on the sidewalk or having a conversation with our kids' teacher or sitting down for a meal with someone, if we enter any of those situations and we let fear um kind of set our course, fear is going to tell us to shut down, to not give too much away, to not say too much, to not share too much, to not get judged. Fear is going to tell us all the ways the other person might be a risk to us. Fear is going to look at that other person and read negativity instead of what probably honestly is there, which is just somebody else living their own life. Fear to me, I've talked about in this podcast how I really believe fear and love live on these polar opposite ends of the scale. And I think that most often when my interactions with other people don't go well, it is because fear is holding the loudest voice in my head. It's because fear is calling the shots instead of that deeper sense of wonder, that internal sense of love that I think we all possess if we make space for it. Friends, are you asking me, okay, Shauna, I hear that you love people. Great. But I think people are terrible. Or maybe you're thinking, like, why? Why are we giving people the benefit of the doubt just for walking around, for existing, for being in this world in their own skin with their own experiences? That seems overly generous. People don't deserve that. How have people earned that? All of that. Or maybe you're just like, I want to love people better, but I struggle sometimes to see the wonder. I understand that 100%, especially because fear has a very loud voice and we live in a world fueled by fear. We live in a society that is so fueled by fear that sometimes it's hard to hear literally anything else. And so, why don't I bring in my little inner tempest self, my tiny little extroverted Shauna child that loves everyone. And if I tap into that, it's very easy for me to tell you why I think people are wonderful. So I'm going to give you my own personal top 5. And as you listen, maybe you'll have some more things that come to mind. I would love to know. Reason number 5 that people are wonderful. And that is that, friends, people keep getting better. And I mean that on 2 levels. One, I believe humanity keeps getting better. There are things that are better in the world today that used to be terrible. And because of that, I'm going to hold firm to that. I think that people are getting better. Things do get worse, but I think things get better too. But more than that, let's zoom in on each wondrous little human soul existing in the world today. Friends, people are always getting better. So we are born into these bodies that grow and then degrade, right? It's not this natural thing. It's not like a given that everything just gets better with time, because a lot of things don't get better with time. A lot of things about our personhood don't get better with time. Our skin, our memory, but people still manage to always get better. People grow and change. People like they learn things, they improve, they make mistakes, and then they make up for them. People are always getting better. I'm always getting better, and I see people around me getting better day after day after day. And you know what? That's not easy, which makes me think people must be pretty freaking fantastic, because people are getting better basically because they're wonderful. People are getting better basically because they want to be better, not because there's some sort of payoff, not for any other reason, just because of this internal drive to be more, to be better. And I think that's pretty powerful and pretty beautiful. And when you strip away all the ways that culture twists that and turns it into marketing ploys and shame games and yada, 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 when you strip away all the external things that kind of taint that amazing trait of getting better, you come back to a human person doing the best they can. And I think that's pretty darn wonderful. Another reason number 4, why I think people are wonderful is that, like I mentioned when I was talking about the wonder at the beginning, friends, every person is their own person. How does that even exist? Like, how are we all our own person and we're still all together, coexisting, being each other's people, but we're still our own person? To me, that's kind of a wonder, because people could be just like roboting around, just doing the things they're supposed to, hugging their kids before bed and just, clocking in and clocking out. But instead, Every person is a person doing things in their own way. They've got a soul and a heart. People have passions and dreams, and every single person is a person that has those things. Even the people that aren't behaving, especially well, they're still a person. And that's pretty remarkable. So to me, people are wonderful just because they're them. Like that is it's a wonder. It's a wonder. The other thing that I think is wonderful about people is that people were made for connection, which means that even though every person is a person with their own individual unique experience, people still find each other. And not only that, people love each other. They care for each other. People seek out other people to meet that connection need. And in that happens, like in that recipe, we are creating love, we are creating compassion, we are creating relationship, which is another wonder. To me, the fact that people seek out connection makes them fantastic because it means that although I'm me and you are you, we also belong to each other. And that incredible connection and autonomy existing at the same time is really kind of a wonderful thing. I know that I am so grateful for connection. I know that connection keeps me ticking. And so I'm putting it on my list of why people are wonderful. The other thing that I think makes people wonderful, and this is probably the most classic thing you hear, but I think that we need to sit with it for a minute because every person has a unique point of view. Every person is a unique person because we're all made unique. We all have different elements that come to us naturally, and because we've all lived these really complicated stories that have built us into these wonderfully dynamic, complex, amazing, wondrous, unique people. To me, that's pretty amazing. That is wonderful indeed because it means that it just means the world is kind of endless. That's what it means to me. There's so much possibility when you consider all of the different perspectives and unique ways of being in the world. And when we all come together and when we form connections, the possibilities are pretty darn endless. And to me, that is one of the most wonderful things about humanity and people as a whole. The final thing, and this one is the first for me because I just think I'm pausing because I want to say the right word and I don't know what it is. This one is the most important to me because it feels truly magical. It feels, this of all the things on the list, feel like the most wondrous, the most impossible, the most how. How is that even true? And that, my friends, is resiliency. I will never tire of watching people that have fallen down get back up again, wipe the dust off, and keep trying. I will never tire of people taking miserable, awful, heartbreaking situations and turning them into pivotal, pivotal game changing things that make the world better. People are so flipping resilient. People's determination to survive, to thrive, to take care of their needs, to care for each other, It's baffling to me because there's no better way to explain that other than just straight up like humanity. Our humanity makes us resilient just in essence of what it is, because humanity is that experience of learning and growing and hurting and recovering and making like hard things into beautiful things. And I know that in my own life, the resiliency that I have had through, really intense mental health struggles, through PTSD, through experiences that could have taken me out for the count. The fact that I have persevered, and not just persevered, but like created something wonderful and new from those hard things, I really respect that about myself. And I respect that about every single one of you, because all of us are writing that kind of story day after day after day. The most amazing, wonderful thing about people is that they are resilient. We're fighters, and not fighters like that we're fighting each other. We're fighters like we are going to hang on. We are going to fight, and we're going to create something good. And I see people doing that every day. And I'm telling you, if you take a deep breath, next time you're feeling testy with people and look around you, you are going to see it too. So that, my friends, is my top 5. And I want to just kind of wrap up this episode with some of those like practical tips, some ideas to help you kind of connect with and appreciate the humanity in other people, and to help you just improve your experience. If you're a person that's like, I want to feel like people are wonderful, but over and over and over and over again, it feels like interactions go wrong. People are mean to me. Um, I feel rejected. I'm lonely. If those are the things that are popping up in your head, I really do have some actual, tangible, practical ideas for you. You're just going to have to bear with me because A, I am not in any way saying I do all of these things perfectly all of the time, and I don't want anybody to get that memo. I really do believe that each of us as a human has the capacity to connect with other humans and to love them well. And sometimes I think that we get caught in our um we get caught in our thoughts, we get caught in our fears, and we forget that the person has that plays the biggest role in whether you connect with other people well is actually you. And 9 times out of 10, that feels like a really random number to throw out. But very often, I think that you will find, if you can shift the perspective with which you approach people, your interactions with people are going to go so much better. And the beautiful thing about um, learning how to love others better, learning how to connect well, is that it's kind of a circular self-affirming process that when we approach people with an open heart and we love them well and then they respond well, we can more easily love the next person well or pour back into that relationship, and it like reaffirms the um the initial premise that people are worth loving, versus if we come in with fear and we start with that mindset, we will create a chain of events where we react to people in ways that cause them to respond to us in a way that isn't loving. which reaffirms the fact that we don't believe that people are all that great and we just kind of spiral the other direction. Now, 100%, this doesn't always work because there are people that don't know how to be loved well. And there are people that are so afraid, so caught up in their own narratives that there's no amount of showing up with an open heart that's going to change that dynamic. But I have found that although it doesn't change everyone's like response to me, because I can't change everyone else's behavior, if I approach people with a heart that is centered in love and not fear, that I feel better walking away no matter how that interaction and connection goes down. So, here, my friends, are some little tricks, tips, ideas to help you show up for other people in a way that creates space for like everyone's wonder, everyone's amazingness. Here are some things that I do regularly that help me to love people well and that help me to feel confident that I'm living out my number one calling on this planet, which is to show up with love. So, the first thing that I would suggest is probably something you've heard before, and that is offering the most generous assumption. What does that mean? The most generous assumption. If you haven't heard this phrase before, whenever someone does or says something that brings up that fear response in you, that feeling of like, why would they say that? Or, well, that's not very nice. Or, who do they think they are? Or, fear usually sounds like questioning and self protecting guardedness. So, it might sound like, why do they think that about me? Or, why are they mad at me? Whatever it feels like, you're going to notice because you're going to have this feeling of like, uh oh, that's what it feels like. Offering the most generous assumption just looks like thinking about how could we put ourselves in their shoes and imagine for a minute the most generous explanation for why they have that look on their face. Um, Sometimes for me, that will look like a really practical example. If I walk into a group of people I haven't met, or I spend time around somebody that I haven't really like gotten to know well yet, and they have this like expression of like kind of, it feels to me a lot like sometimes judginess or just distaste or dislike, it is real easy to get caught in my feels because I like to be liked, friends. But when when I can catch myself and try to shift my mindset and try to think of I'll think of an actual story. What is the most generous assumption? Oftentimes, what I will land on in a situation like that is that, that person probably feels insecure right now. Maybe they feel like they aren't really belonging here. Maybe that person is afraid that if they smile, I'm going to like think their teeth look weird. Like there are so many assumptions that we can make that can pull us out of that fear, self-protective space and bring us back into a space of generosity and love. Because if I see, Sue, we'll call her Sue. If I see Sue sitting on the other side of the table from me and she looks miserable, and I don't read that misery to be that she hates me, but instead I read it to be that she is hurting, that she's lonely, that she's scared, then I feel nothing but empathy and warmth and love for her. Or, another example, if somebody says something and they say something like just a little harsh, like a little like curt. If I can stop myself before I bring up my big self-defensive reaction and try to think of why what they said isn't true, if I can slow myself down and I can just think like, man, that person seems really afraid right now. That person seems lost. Man, that person has no idea that what they said was just hurtful. That, my friends, is the most generous assumption. The most generous assumption is never, that person doesn't like me and they're mean, which sadly, I think is what our fear brain wants to jump to most of the time. So, if you can offer the most generous assumption, you are going to create interactions with people that feel easier, and you're going to be able to show up in spaces, even spaces that feel a little bit intimidating, with ease, because you're going to recognize that it is not about you, which, my friends, is my second suggestion. And that is just that we really do need to do work around giving other people permission to have feelings. Wait for it. Give other people permission to have feelings that are not about you. I know it sounds kind of silly to say, like, of course, people have feelings that are not about me. However, I know that my nature, if I'm not careful, is to assume that other people's experience and their feelings and their anxieties and their frustrations that are there somehow my responsibility and that they're somehow caused by me. And what happens is when I get into that thought pattern, somebody is anxious, for example. This happens with my husband all the time. He runs more anxious than I do. He's much more like cautious and he's a planner. And sometimes he gets anxious. And for a long time in our marriage, when he would feel anxious about something, like, for example, if we were going to bed and there was a candle lit and he was like, "Oh, you got to put that out. I'm nervous." I would hear what he said and I would think he was actually saying, "Shawna, you're not very responsible. Put out that candle." Or, "I don't trust you with that candle." Or, um, "You're stressing me out because you're just a stressful person." Like, I mean, the places we'll jump in our brain are pretty extreme, but that's what fear does, because fear is all about locking it up, keeping us safe, blocking out any avenues where people could get in and hurt our feelings. But if I give my husband permission to feel anxious and for it not to be about me, then when he feels anxious about whether, the door is locked or we blew out the candle, I can just let him feel that. And I can feel empathy and I can feel ease and gratitude because I don't actually feel anxious about that. And it turns into a whole different interaction, and my experience changes, which means that the way that I treat him changes, which means that instead of creating an avenue for disconnection, we create an avenue for connection because I've given him space for things in his life to just be about him, for feelings that he has to be about him. Friends, I know that as people pleasers, that we have a little bit of a belief system that, like, if we are trying to please all the time and always assuming that our everything that people feel that we have some responsibility in it, that that's somehow more generous or more responsible. But I'm telling you right now, I think that's not true. I think that is totally false. And the truth is that when we make other people's problems our problem, we turn into, like, we amp up the problem and we create dissension and we start to feel defensive and we want to protect ourselves when in the end my husband's anxiety was never my problem in the first place. And so if I let him have feelings that are not about me, it means that I don't have to feel insecure and lonely and scared and worried that he doesn't love me anymore if he's having a bad day. And if we can do that with both our dearest friends and spouses and with strangers on the internet, we would do ourselves a huge service in building connection instead of creating barriers and dissension and further polarizing ourselves from other people. Suggestion number 3. This is simple, only it's not really simple because it actually takes a little bit of like courage. And that is this. Be the kind of person that you want to interact with. I know that for my introverted friends, this is a different kind of challenge, but even from that perspective, there is a type of person that you want to have interactions with. And if you can show up with people from that stance, what you can do is set this beautiful tone that allows people to just be. They get to be their best, wonderful, wondrous selves. They get to respond to kind of your prompts instead of the other way that I think we often approach situations where we hold our cards real close to our chest. Like we keep our feelings and our warmth and our open hearts all wrapped up until somebody proves they're safe. But the problem is if I'm trying to keep myself safe and you're trying to keep yourself safe, what happens is that we never get the opportunity to actually experience safety with each other because we're too busy holding back and protecting ourselves. And so this suggestion of being the kind of person that you want to interact with, it is different for all of us, right? Because all of us want to be a different kind of person, and that is great. But I guarantee you that you are not hoping to interact with the kind of person that assumes that you're mean, that assumes that you're bad, that assumes that they hate you. I guarantee that the kind of person that you want to interact with is not somebody that snaps to harsh judgments and shuts you down because they're afraid that you're going to think something about them. That is not the kind of person any of us want to connect with. And so, if you can walk into an encounter, a situation, a new space, and show up the way that you want to invite other people to show up, something beautiful happens again and again and again. For reals. This one is important. Number 4, friends. You have to, we all have to stop pouring from an empty cup. How can we show up with the most generous assumption, giving permission for people to have all sorts of feelings, being the kind of person that we want to interact with? How can we have the bandwidth to do any of that if we haven't taken care of ourselves? So, this idea of loving people well, this idea of honoring the wonder in your fellow humanity, it starts with you. It starts with loving yourself. It starts with honoring the wonder of your own humanity, which means that you honor your own story, you honor your own weaknesses. It means that you honor when you need something. Not only that, if we stop pouring from an empty cup, it means that we are offering ourselves the most generous assumption. It means that we are giving ourselves permission to have feelings. It means that we are being the kind of person to ourselves, like in our internal dialogue, that we want to actually interact with. We have more control over that than we give ourselves credit for. And love, my friends, starts with you. It really does. It starts here. It starts with having a sense of being loved, of being taken care of being safe. And that as adults today, adults in this world with free will, we can give ourselves those things, which means Then, when you walk into the next situation where somebody's a little crabby, you're going to start from a place of a full love cup. You're going to have the opportunity to show up with an open heart because your heart is already well nourished and cared for. This last one um is kind of silly, and I say it a little bit as silly, but I also say it like with my whole heart because um I think that I think that this is key. I really do, and it's maybe a little unconventional, but one huge tip for how to show up with love, how to love other people well, how to honor the humanity in everyone else is, my friends, are you ready? Assume that everyone else already loves you exactly as you are. And I'm not kidding about that. Because if we can walk into the world, if we can enter community, if we can enter encounters with other wondrous human people with a full sense of confidence in our own glory, in the fact that we are incredible. If you don't feel like you know that you're incredible, that is work that I want you to do. I want you to start capturing, listing, collecting those things that you know make you extremely lovable. Because those pieces of our personality that we're proud of, that we know are amazing, those pieces of who we are, if we settle into them, what we do is we create this basis, this easy flow. If we walk into a new space with the assumption living on the top of our brain that people are going to see us as unworthy, we are going to behave in a way that holds people at bay. We are going to be self protective and cold and guarded. And we are going to basically rob people of the opportunity of getting to know that actual most lovable part of us. Because, friends, if we walk in, if we meet somebody, if we show up in a space and we feel a confidence in the things that make us amazing, if we have top of mind just how wondrously, incredibly human we are, just being us, we give people the opportunity to see like us for reals. We open our hearts, we show up with more warmth. We give we give people that most generous assumption. And in this case, the most generous assumption is that obviously these people are going to see what makes me amazing. Obviously. I am not kidding that this last strategy is a huge part of how I try to show up in the world. I really do actively try to find that place of confidence before I put myself out there in any way, before I get here on a podcast episode, before I launch a new product, before I speak to people or meet new people or have an interview or any other thing, if I can see my interaction with any other wondrous human person as this opportunity to give them a glimpse of me so that they can give them a glimpse of who they are, it just organically translates into relationships. It translates into new best friends. It works. And if for you, what, all of our areas of confidence are going to be different. And so perhaps you are somebody that's thoughtful and methodical. If that's what you're confident about, anchor yourself in that before you show up in a space, before you put yourself out there. If you have confidence about literally anything, the thing that you value in yourself, get that thing right on the tip top of your brain so that it is very, very easy to notice when people do respond well to you. Because if you're walking in feeling afraid people aren't going to like you, you're not going to notice the signs that people do like you. You're going to notice what you're looking for. We always notice what we're looking for. And so, what if we were just looking for people to accept us and love us? What if we just made space for that and then let the magic unfold? Because humans are seeking connection. Like I said, when I was listing the things that are amazing about people, people are driven to connect. And so that is going to play itself out pretty effortlessly. So, friends, assume everyone loves you exactly as you are. I'm not kidding. That, my friends, is a great tip on how you can show up and love people well without letting all that fear get in the way. Oh, I could talk pretty much forever about people. Hopefully, I haven't like bored you as I just go on and on and on about humanity, but I really, really do think that people are amazing. And I think that if we can show up in this complicated world, giving people space to be amazing, if we can start looking for it and seeing the wonder in our fellow human beings, we might be able to like lower the volume on all the hate and all the fear and all the anger and all the, comparison and everything that shows up in this world and holds all of us back from truly beautiful connected lives. Okay. So before we go, you know that I like to leave you with a permission slip. And today's permission slip is going to take us back to item number 4 and item number 5 on our list of how to love people well. And this, my friends, is what I want to give you permission to do. Hold on to your hats because I really want you to do this. You, my dear friend, have permission to honor the wonder, the humanity, the precious uniqueness, the resiliency, the incredible nature that is you. You have permission to truly look at that and respect it for what it is. Pure magic. It's pure magic, my friend. You have permission to honor the wonder in yourself so that you will be better equipped to step out into the world and love other incredible, wonderful, magical humans well. Oh my goodness. Thank you for being here with me. If you have made it through this entire episode about loving people, you're my new favorite person. I really would love to know, what are your reflections as you are listening to this podcast? I could probably talk about this with you for hours. So please find my comments. Head over to my social media at Shawna Clingerman on Instagram or at Shawna Clingerman Designs on Facebook. or you can head over to my website and check out the post for this episode, which will include links to anything that I mentioned and some notes to kind of help you recap what we talked about in this love fest today. But I would love to know, what do you think makes people special? How do you challenge yourself to love people more? And what tricks do you use to help yourself show up with an open heart when you are interacting with people day in and day out? Friends, once again, as a comment creator, when you download, subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. And every time you share any of my work, it makes a world of difference for me. I can't even tell you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for helping me to reach new eyeballs and new ears, and for being here and supporting me week after week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a single Fearless episode. And until we meet again, my challenge to you is going to be the same as my sign off. And that, my friends, is this: let's choose love, my friends.